President Biden and Facebook are at odds over vaccine misinformation. In the past few days, he has basically said of social media companies, not just basically, he said it, they're killing people of the vaccine misinformation campaigns that he says Facebook has not been aggressive enough in taking down. Facebook fired back and said it was the administration's fault that they hadn't met their vaccination targets. Andy Serwer, our editor-in-chief, has been watching closely the sort of attacks that we've seen on social media over the past few years. What do you make of this latest one, Andy? It's sort of unusually transparent and public, it feels.
Yeah, well, the Wall Street Journal, Julie, has a great story this morning about how the White House and Facebook and other social media platforms had some communications privately, and that the White House got frustrated with the lack of movement by Facebook in terms of resolving these issues. And if you look at Guy Rosen, who is the VP of Integrities at Facebook, his post over the weekend sort of responding to the president, you know, he goes on and on about, oh, we're doing all this to help people understand what's going on with vaccines and how to get vaccines and the importance of vaccines. But he doesn't really address so much the problem that the White House has, which is the misinformation. Now, he does address it, but the real concern the White House has is the misinformation on the platform. And, you know, this speaks to the bigger problem that Miles pointed to in the tease, which is, you know, this ongoing friction, if you will, between Washington and these social media platforms. And it's tough to resolve.
It is tough to resolve. We haven't seen it resolved, right? I mean, it feels quite disingenuous for Facebook, though, to push back against, say, you guys are the ones who didn't meet your vaccination target, when indeed, you know, I think anecdotally, a lot of us have friends and family who have gotten misinformation on Facebook or YouTube or other social media platforms for that matter. But the question, as always, is what to do about it.
Yeah, that's a huge, huge problem. And it's going to be very tough to resolve. I mean, it's tough for Facebook to figure out what to do. But that's the real problem, Julie, with Facebook. I mean, has there ever been a company this big and with this much import that has less control over its products and services? So, in other words, if Ford, you know, well, let's say that, you know, some of their cars crash. I mean, there'd be this huge outcry. They'd stop the production of the cars. They'd fix the cars. Here you have a company that has all these problems. Now, a lot of these problems are new. Society's never confronted these problems before, but they keep spinning out of control. They're new problems. The company really, to be honest, doesn't understand the problems. They try to fix them. You know, there's questions about whether they're operating in good faith or not. Meanwhile, I think we should point out that this, again, has not really deterred investors particularly. I mean, the company just passed $1 trillion in terms of its market capitalization late last month, down a little bit today, but in line with the market. And so for all the hue and cry going on in Washington, you know, the stock keeps on keeping on, the business keeps on keeping on. And this has been a theme, you know, going back to 2016 now, you guys, 5 years we've been saying, oh, the company's messed up. Stock keeps going higher.
Well, and on that point, Andy, I mean, the only way that I read Facebook's continued, I mean, they're choosing to come back at the White House. They could let that dog lie. They could just, you know, let Jen Psaki get up there and say things. And I understand it's very rare that a company would be called out by name by the press secretary and not say something. But to me, it feels like it's Facebook admitting that they've got a real regulatory concern. Now, you and I both know the market is going to, you know, punt on that until the absolute last moment. But what else could their motivation be for being this forceful other than a real fear that regulation will change that business model, which, as you mentioned, you know, investors are just in love with?
Yeah, that could be the case. But, you know, I was there a couple years ago before COVID, and I talked to Guy Rosen and some other senior executives there. And it's a pretty insular culture, you know. I don't think that's a big secret. And so an echo chamber, if you will. And so when these people all get together and sort of bouncing off each other, you know, it's like, hey, well, this is bad. The White House to say we're killing people, which is strong stuff. You know, we're going to fight back. So that could just be the case, or something deeper, as you suggest, Miles.
Well, we'll keep following it. That is for sure. Andy, thank you so much. Andy Serwer, our editor-in-chief. Appreciate it this morning.